Okay, so good evening and welcome once again to this channel. This evening we'll be talking about the concept of growth and development. Remember, this is developmental psychology course and this is our second video. So we'll be looking at growth and development. Remember, in the first video, for those of you that have not watched that one, you can go back to it. In the introduction, we talked about what psychology is. We talked about what developmental psychology is. And we talked about basically behavior, which is, you remember we talked about the overt and the covert behaviors. We talked about the general four goals of psychology. We say one of them is to describe. Then after description, you explain. After explanation, you predict. And after prediction, you control or you provide an intervention. And so in this video, we'll be looking at the concept of growth and the concept of development in developmental psychology. So we say here that developmental psychology has two basic concepts that are usually used, frequently used, and we have the concept of growth and the concept of development. Now, growth is a concept in developmental psychology that refers to the quantitative changes that are increase in bodily dimensions, such as an individual's height, weight, and the individual's size. Like we said, it is quantitative in nature. The changes that occur in an individual quantitatively. It has to do with your growth as an individual in terms of your height, in terms of your size, in terms of your weight. Now, as a child, your height is not the same as that of adolescent and is not the same as that of an adult. The same thing is applicable to your weight and your size. Normally, it is expected that as you grow, as you increase in age or as you advance in age, your height is supposed to increase, and then your size and weight is also supposed to increase. The example we have here, as a result of growth, the size and structure of internal organs and the brain increases. So your internal organs, your external organs are expected to increase. Of course, we know that we grow not just physically, we also grow mentally. And this implies that the child has the tendency of learning, remembering, and reasoning as a result of growth of the brain. As your brain grows, as you increase, as it increases, it is expected that you have some tendencies of learning faster, remembering things. Your reasoning has to also increase. Your remembering capacity has to also increase. And then, because the size of your brain is also increasing. Now, development, on the other hand, is those qualitative changes. Remember, in growth, we said it is quantitative changes. So in development, it is qualitative changes. Then these qualitative changes are expected to come along with growth. And remember, we say that as you are growing, the growth in this case has to do with the increase in your size and the increase in your mentality. You grow physically and you grow mentally. Your brain is supposed to increase, and as it is increasing, your learning capability, your remembering capability, and all these things are expected to also grow. Now, as you develop or as you grow, you are expected to develop along with that growth changes that are occurring as you are growing. So here we say it has to do with qualitative changes. And these qualitative changes are predicted on two basic concepts, which are the concept of learning and the concept of maturation. So as you develop, it is expected that your development has to do with, or has to be predicted by your learning and by your maturation. I will also say that development is also a progressive sequence of orderly and coherent changes. The changes are expected to be orderly and are expected to be coherent, and it has to do with sequence. It has to be sequential in nature because you progress. As you progress, it is expected that the sequence has to be followed. It has to be coherent. It has to be orderly as the changes are growing. Now, development also will occur at each stages as individual grows and develop. Now, a time will come when we will talk about some of these stages as we move forward. So it has to do with your learning, it has to do with your maturation, and your maturation marks the end of your growth, and your maturation, as you begin to maturate, it increases as time goes on. And then eventually psychologists will say that maturity will therefore mark the end of your growth and your development psychologically, especially when it comes to um, developmental psychology. But remember, development has to be continuous. It doesn't stop. It continues from one stage to another. Remember, in the introduction we said these are theories that explains individuals' growth and development from the time you were conceived up until the time you die. So it is a continuous process that moves from one stage and another. Now, developmental changes in human beings are categorized, into changes in size, proportion, and disappearance of old features. You develop a change in your size, the change in your proportion, and how these things will disappear as new features are coming in. The old features are expected to disappear. Do you remember something about teeth? Your milk teeth are expected to be removed so that your permanent teeth will come. The kind of nerves you have will not be the same as when you grow older. When you were younger, the nerves you have are not the same nerves you have now, though they appear the same, but a time will come, either they will be removed by nature or they grow and then you cut those ones off. You are cutting the old ones so that the new ones will come. And this has to deal with every chronological age. At age 2, the changes will be much better than at age 1. At age 3 or at age 4, the changes will also continue to grow. Some of them will be growing, and a time will be going. As time is going, some of them will be declining. Some of the features, as they decline, they go off. Just the way I made mention of your nails. For instance, as you are growing, it's either some of them are being removed or they grow older and you cut those ones off. What about your hair? I talked about your teeth. These are physical things that you can see. And these changes, of course, are not just physically. They have to be emotionally, they have to be mentally, and they are disappearing because new ones have to replace the old ones that have been there. Remember I said earlier that development is basically predictable by two concepts, and this concept was the concept of learning and the concept of maturation. Both of them interact with each other as we move or as we develop as an individual. Now let's quickly look at what are the patterns. But before we look at what are the patterns, of course, I made mention of learning. Learning is a concept in psychology that is described as an acquisition of a relatively permanent change in behavior as a result of experience. What did I say? I said learning in psychology is defined as an acquisition of a relatively permanent change in behavior as a result of experience or practice. As you practice, as you experience, you learn, and it has to be relatively permanent. because at a particular point in time, it has to be permanent. And if it is there, it has to last for a particular period of time, and the period it is lasting is expected to be permanent, and that's why it is called relatively permanent change. And those changes may be with you permanently, they may not be with you permanently, because they have to be what? Relative, and that's why it is called relatively permanent change. Maturation is just I don't need to explain that in details, all right? We know what maturation is. You get matured, you develop and move from one emotional state to another. It has to do with your emotions, it has to do with your compatibility and all of that. So, and they will be, as a result of your learning and experience. So we look at patterns of development. Development generally has two basic patterns. Remember, we said earlier that development has to be continuous, right? But then there are basically two patterns that you develop as an individual. And the first is what we call cephalocaudal. Cephalocaudal is from the word cephalo and cauda. Cephalo means head, while cauda means tail. All right. Cephalo means head, while cauda means tail. Now, the cephalocauda is a form of development that proceeds from the height, from head to tail. As a young man, as a young woman, you are small, you grow to a particular height. Maybe you grow to like 5 inches, you go to like 2 inches, you grow to 3 inches, and then you continue like that until your growth will stop. So the development pattern is just basically two, and that is where you have the cephalocaudal. Cephalo means the head, while cauda means the tail. The second part is what we refer to as proximodistal. The proximodistal pattern is the growth from the extremities, the periphery, that is from your left to your right. Remember, this has to do with your size, right? Your height and your size. So it is expected that you grow taller, and as you are growing taller, you also increase your shape. So proximo in this case has to do with central, beginning from the center of your middle, and then distal has to do with your periphery terminus, the left or the right. That's what proximodistal deals with. The extremities, your shoulders become broader, your head is beginning to expand, your fingers are also becoming bigger, and all these things are part of the proximodistal pattern of development. Remember, we said what? Two basic patterns occur in development, which are cephalocaudal, that is cephalo from the word cephalocaudal from the word cephalo meaning head, cauda meaning tail, while proximodistal, proximo meaning center or middle, and then distal meaning the extremities or your periphery terminators. The right, left, your fingers beginning to become bigger, your chest beginning to become bigger, your head is also bigger, and something of that nature. So from there, from the patterns, we quickly move to what we refer to as principles of development. Now, development generally has a whole lot of principles, but in this case, we are going to identify maybe 8 or 9. So we look at the 8 or the 9 of them, depending on the ones that we can lay our hands on. Now, in the principles of development, the first principle is the fact that the process of development follows an orderly sequence or pattern. I just defined pattern, all right? I just talked about patterns of development. And what did I say about it? It has to do with two, which is what? The cephalocaudal and the proximodistal. So the first principle says the process of development follows an orderly sequence or pattern in all individuals. For example, The orderly pattern of physical and mental development of the children follow the law of direction of sequence of development. Remember, we talked about that direction of sequence just now. You remember the law of cephalocaudal, right? So psychologists maintain that the direction has to be predicted by the cephalocaudal law as well as the prosymodistal law. I made mention of it. So first principle says development follows an orderly sequence or pattern. And what's that pattern? I just talked about it now. All right. The cephalocaudal law and then the prosymodistal law. That's the first principle of development. Principle number 2. Development proceeds from general to specific response as differentiation and integration. It proceeds from what? General to specific response. Let's begin from when a child is conceived. When a child is conceived, the fetus is just there. There is a fusion between the spermatozoa and then the ova, and ova released from the ovaries of the woman. And so when there is a fusion or when there is a fertilization, you don't actually know what is there for the first number of days or even weeks. It's just there. You may not be able to see exactly what it looks like, but then it's just like general something, and then eventually it begins to form into a human being that can easily be recognized until the person is eventually given birth to. So it has to do with from general to then specific. What about language development of a child? The language development of a child when the child is born initially is not usually specific, all right? You remember the children will be speaking like baby, baby, mama, mama, something like that, all right? Sometimes they try to sing songs, but you may not be able to understand what they are singing. Sometimes it's only the mothers that understands them because they are always closer to them and something like that. Then again, there is another example of a mother's communication with a child, a concept in psychology called the motherese. That's a simple form of language where mothers often use in talking to their babies, also called baby talk. Sometimes they are singing it in song, sometimes they are singing it in they are talking, or sometimes it's a form of singing. So the motherese pattern of communication is when the communication is not being specific, it's just general. They are just trying different things. So remember, principle 2 says what? Development proceeds from general to specific response as a differentiation and then as what? An integration. So it has to be from the general to specific. It moves from general to specific. That's principle number 2. Number 1, we said it has patterns. Number 2 has to do what? Proceeding from general to specific. I hope you are following. All right. Now, so let's look at principle number 3. Principle number 3 says development is predictable with changes, namely growth, maturation, and learning. I will make reference to this when I am setting exams. I will make reference to this. So you pay attention, you catch it up, and try to make meaning out of it. So development is predictable with changes, namely growth, maturation, and learning. You remember we talked about this before. We said as you are developing, you are expected to grow. And as you are growing, you are expected to develop. And as you are developing, you are expected to develop through what? Learning, and then you get matured. So development is predictable with changes, and the changes are what? Changes of growth, changes of learning, and changes of what? Maturation. I defined learning earlier. I also talked about maturation. And like I said earlier, it also continues with the effect from growth and learning. As you grow, you are expected to develop. You remember? As you are developing, as you grow, you are expected to be learning, and then you are expected to be attaining some level of maturation as it grows with you. Now, I defined learning earlier. So learning is defined psychologically as a relatively permanent change in behavior as a result of experience or practice. I made mention of that earlier. So we know that for an individual to grow and develop fully, there must be 4 basic concepts. I also talked about it, namely we have growth, we have maturation, we have learning. This is not for, it's supposed to be 3, but I think I just added that to make it up. So we have that put into place. So remember, development is what? Predictable by, by changes, or predictable with changes, which are changes of growth, changes of maturation, and changes of learning. This is principle number 3. Principle number 4. There are individual differences and variations in development. There are individual differences and variations in development, and this implies that children develop at different rates. Children develop at different rates. I remember giving you an instance, or I don't know whether it was, I think I've given this instance before. I talked about 2 identical twins born in a particular village. One is taken to a particular location and the other remains in another location. So it is possible that the one in a better location will grow faster, and the one in a location that is not very good or not too good may not develop or grow faster. So development is, there are individual differences, and these individual differences are sometimes sometimes predicted by 2 basic argumentative concepts in psychology, which are the concepts of nurture and nature. A lot of people believe that individuals grow faster or develop faster as a result of nature, while others believe that they develop faster as a result of nurture. And nature has to do with your biological components, while nurture deals with the environment where you grow. So individuals are not usually the same. We have heard that countless times. Psychologists or older people will always tell us that all fingers are not what? Equal, because individuals are expected to not to be the same. The same thing in the same environment, even in the same environment as we are, even in school, there are people that will grow faster. There are people that will develop faster, while there are others that it will take them time to be able to develop and attain a particular level. So individuals' difference counts a lot when it comes to development. And these individual differences may occur at every stage, from the infancy through adolescence through adulthood. And this is where, of course, we know that the concept of nature versus nurture comes in. Now, I put this question to you briefly. The concept of nature versus nature. Which of them influences individual development more, and why? Which of these concepts influences individual development more, and why? That's the concept of nature versus nurture. You can go to the comment section and drop your answer there so that we can look at it together and drop off the argument. Or do you think it's both of them? It's left for you. So that's principle number 4. Principle number 5. Growth and development are continuous. I made mention of this before. Growth and development are continuous. An individual is continuously developing. You develop every blessed day of your life until you finally seize your breath. Psychologists call this growth spurs. And the growth spurs has to do with you are growing. Sometimes you grow and develop slow. Sometimes you grow and develop rapidly. That is the concept of growth spur. And that has to do with infancy and particularly around adolescence. Some growth spurt occur. Sometimes it may be, you see somebody at the age of 2 or age of 3 is looking like somebody who is already 5, or a child of 17, sorry, a child of 7, 8 years is looking like a 12-year-old child. So growth spurt can also happen. A time, in some cases, you see a child of 13, 14 looking like 6 or 7 years old. So these are some of the sports that we talk about. So, but we are constantly developing. Remember, something that we do every day, just like learning. We say learning is every day. We learn every day. We learn everywhere. So development, growth and development too are expected to be continuous concept. Are we following? Yes, sir. Okay, so let's proceed. We move to principle number 6. And principle number 6 says development behavior is controlled by needs. Development behavior is controlled by needs. And the explanation here says that the developing child needs nutrients or nutritional materials in order to enhance his or her cognitive, physiological, emotional, and social needs. When you are not eating, do you think you can grow? It will be difficult. Development too may not occur. So you need nutrients. So it is controlled by needs. It is controlled by whatever area of development that we want to talk about is controlled by needs. And that's why a psychologist called Abraham Maslow developed the hierarchy of needs. And in the hierarchy of needs, there are 5 stages. The first stage is physiological needs, where you need the food, the shelter, and all those things. Up until self-actualization, there are 5. So you might Google it. Google Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of need. Abraham is just normal Abraham. Then Maslow, Maslow, hierarchy of needs. You will see it. So principle number 6 says development behavior is controlled by needs. Whatever it is that is your area of development, or whatever it is that the area you are growing, it must be controlled by certain needs. And these needs are the ones that will help you to develop or to grow and get to that particular stage. As a young child developing, you need nutrients or nutritional materials to be able to attain your emotional growth, your cognitive growth, your physical growth, your physiological growth, and all these things. You need them. So that is what we are talking about. Now, these needs may not necessarily be physical needs. It could be emotional needs. It could be psychological needs. For instance, a child that is growing requires love and affection. He or she requires belongingness and acceptance, especially from his or her peers, the elderly ones, so that he or she will satisfy his or her emotional and social needs. These needs will help the person to grow and to develop. Just for instance, somebody who is developing or growing or developing into a responsible adult, he or she needs emotional acceptance, he needs psychological support, he needs social support, he needs nutrients in terms of physical or biological nutrients where you will eat. All these things are the needs that controls what? Development. So anybody, a child, both male and female, growing has these needs that controls his or her development. Don't forget, this is principle number 6. Principle number 7. Principle number 7 says development proceeds by different developmental changes. Development proceeds by different developmental changes. Now, human life proceeds by stages. It's proceeded by stages. I think there is a small mistake there. Okay, so we can correct it if we are taking down the notes. Now, each stage is distinguished by a dominant feature. it is characterized by a specific kind of development which is more prominent than the other. If you listen, or if you have if you are privileged to listen to or read the works of the psychologists like this man, who is also regarded as the father of psychology, Sigmund Freud. Sigmund Freud developed a concept called psychoanalysis, and from that psychoanalysis he propounded 5 psychosexual stages of individual development. So according to this principle says development proceeds by different stages, and at each stage there are physical changes. At each stage there are physical changes that are prominent or are dominant at that particular stage. I give you an example of a young man who is at age 12, 13, 14. At this stage now he's developing into an adolescent already. So you could see physical changes already trying to come up. Changes like the voice could change, the chest begin to become broader. Some of them at that stage will begin to develop pubic hair, and so on and so forth. So these are some of the changes in boys. In girls, or in the female, you could see there could be increase in breast. It could be preceded by onset of menstruation, and these are some of the changes that you see. So at every stage of an individual development or growth, there are changes, both physically, psychologically, mentally, emotionally, that are expected to follow at that particular stage. All right. So every stage, like puberty, we have that into a particular stage where it has to come. As it is coming, it's coming with a particular stage. So at every stage of an individual, as the person develops or grows and develops, there are changes that will occur. So principle 7 says development is preceded by different developmental changes. Now, I made mention of Sigmund Freud's psychoanalytic stages or psychosocial stages of development. By the time we go into that, you will see that he talks about the oral stage, the anal stage, the genital stage, the latency, and then I think it's anal, the oral, the anal, the genital, the latency, genital, and then the 5th one. There are 5 of them. I don't want to delve into them so much now. So, but we will look at them. So at the very first stage, where it is the oral stage, a child at that stage, which is beginning from when the child is born up until, in some cases, 18 months or sometimes 2 years, the child has his sexual pleasure or his pleasure from the mouth, and that's the reason why anything they grab at that stage, they are taking it to their mouth, and then because that's where they are getting their pleasure. A time will come when that stage will be over and they will move to a particular stage, which is the anal stage, and it will shift. The pleasure will now shift from the mouth to another region of the body. So these are the stages that we talk about. So it has developmental stages, and each of the stages has unique features that accompany that particular stage. So it's very important we take note of these things. Principle number 8. Principle number 8 says developmental changes are interrelated and proceed at different rates. Developmental changes are interrelated and proceed at different rates. Remember, we talked about the developmental changes, which we made mention of: physical changes, emotional changes, psychological changes, mental changes. So as we are moving from this one stage to another, we have different interrelated changes. That it doesn't mean that when you are at age 5, you are supposed to grow physically only. Then when you get to age 7, you grow only mentally. When you get to age 10, you grow only psychologically. No. What this means is that as you are age 5 and you attain that particular stage of development, it is expected that you will grow both physically, both mentally, both psychologically, because these changes, these developmental changes are interrelated at different rates and at different stages. So you are expected to, grow and develop at that come along with all of them, or develop and grow with all of them being interrelated, each of them coming up at every stage. Oh, sorry, we said there are 8. We mentioned 8 from the beginning, right? So I think there is a number 9. And let's see what this one says. This one says there are critical periods in development. And these are, I know, so there are critical periods in an individual development. And these periods are development in terms of certain organs and bodily functions. You remember, as you are getting into adult, there are certain, your organs will be moving, becoming bigger. Some of them will be expanding. You look at your hands now, they were not like this when you were 12 or 13. Do you look at your legs? They were not like this. What about your private parts? All these things are the things that we talk about when it comes to this particular principle. So we say that there are critical periods in development of certain organs and functions. Some organs are on your body now as an individual. They may not function until you get to a particular stage. They may not function. It's not as if they will not function totally. No, they will not be able to perform some of the actions they are expected to perform up until you get to a particular stage. You don't expect a child of age 7, 5, 6, 7 to get orgasm, isn't it? But when you get to a particular stage, naturally it is expected to come. So that's why we are saying there are critical periods in development, and each of these periods has certain organs and their functions behaving or performing certain things that they are expected to perform. I don't know whether you understand what I'm trying to say. So that is what that principle is talking about. And it says that the development of organs of the body could be perfected through nutrients or through nutritional materials and other, accident in order to enable them or to enable the organs to function properly. A lot of things could happen. They are like your milk teeth. There are certain things that you may not be able to chew it with, and then that's the reason why you don't expect a child of age 3 or 4 to be biting some bony meat. And that's sometimes the reason why, even as a father or as a mother or as an elderly one, if you are giving them meat, you are looking for those parts that are soft so that they can bite with that kind of teeth that they have at that particular stage in time. So as they grow and get to a particular stage, those organs will also change and function or perform certain functions that they are expected to perform at that particular stage. So in summary, what we are trying to say in essence is that the process of development, remember, follows a particular sequence or pattern. And what do we say about these patterns? We made mention of the cephalocaudal pattern and then the prosimodistal pattern. We also say that development proceeds from general to specific. And we also said development is predictable with what? Changes. And these changes comes with, a particular period of time, and as time goes on. We also say that there are individual differences and variations in development. This was where we were talking about, people born of the same day, same time, even when they are growing in the same environment, it's possible that some will grow faster, some will not grow very fast. Some will develop faster, some may not develop faster. We made mention of the continuity of development, and we say development and growth, or growth and development, are usually what? Continuous. And we say development behavior is controlled by needs. You need nutrients, you need social support, you need emotional support to be able to develop and to be able to grow. And we also say development proceeds by different stages. What are the stages we mentioned? I talked about Sigmund Freud's psychosexual stages of individual development, and I promise that When we get there, we'll explain it better. And we also said that development changes are interrelated. You are not expected to halt one particular section of your development at a particular point in time for the other to come, because the changes are coming interrelatedly, both physically, emotionally, psychologically, and otherwise. Thank you so much, and God bless you. Please remember to subscribe to this channel, click the thumbs up button, and put your notification bell on, so that as we put another video, you will follow us. God bless us all. I see you guys again in the next episode. Thank you.